Hi, I'm Matt Probst. My goal today is to explain a little bit about the concepts of exercise that we employ here at RP Fitness and through Renaissance Exercise. I want to first explain a little about what exercise is. I want to simplify that first and understand that exercise is nothing more than a stimulus that we apply to an organism. If the intensity of that stimulus is sufficient, the organism will then elicit a response. An analogy that I like to use is it's much like laying out and getting a suntan. The sun is not responsible for creating a suntan. It is nothing more than the stimulus. Your body ultimately will change its pigmentation in order to defend itself against future stimulus. Okay? Exercise is much the same way. So in order to get the best benefits out of exercise, we have to understand a few variables. Those are volume, frequency, and intensity. So there is an inverse relationship that we need to understand when applying exercise. Over here, many people work out with the mentality that more is better. Okay? And as we exercise somewhere in this area of volume and frequency. And we find out that over time, our bodies are able to handle more and more volume and intensity, and we keep improving our results. But only to a very finite point in time where the body can no longer produce additional benefit. And as a matter of fact, we begin to digress in our progression over time. So we have to understand that we can only work out so much. So the way to improve that is to ultimately increase our intensity. And being in a relationship where intensity goes up, we find out that volume and frequency ultimately must go down. So our goal is to ultimately increase our intensity high enough where we're working out this area here. Notice the volume and frequency of the exercise must decrease as we increase our intensity. It's pure physics. It's very easy for a human being to jog a mile, but it's physically impossible for a human being to sprint a mile. Okay? But understand from a muscular perspective that it makes more sense for us to increase our intensity, thus lowering our volume and frequency. So I want to speak a little bit more about the intensity. Intensity is defined by the point at which one can no longer perform a positive repetition with proper form. That is what we call momentary muscular failure. Okay? That is what we try to accomplish when we train here at RP Fitness. A little more on that. If we assume that each of my muscles act like little batteries, and through the process of exercise we are emptying out the fuel of the battery, that term is called inroad. Our goal is to inroad a muscle over the period of a very specific period of time. That time is approximately 2 minutes. So we have a mathematical formula to understand intensity. It can be defined as the depth of inroad divided by time. Okay? So if we can achieve that level of intensity, the frequency at which we can do it becomes approximately 2 days a week. The body takes on average 48 to 72 hours to totally recover. In other words, our batteries begin to refill, and the human body goes through a natural overcompensation process where the body will overflow that battery or overcompensate in order to defend itself against future stimulus. This is the very simple concept of recovery as it relates to exercise. We only stimulate and then give the body adequate time to recover. If we exercise too frequently, ultimately we hinder the body's ability to recover from what we're doing to it. In other words, we overwork. Okay? We plateau our results. So recovery is an extremely important factor we need to consider when exercising. The next consideration is volume. The volume speaks to the number of sets of a given exercise that we do. Many people love to follow the 3 sets of 10 approach, but understand that it makes as much sense as doing 5 sets of 20 or 1 set of 100 or even 100 sets of 1. Ultimately, our goal in an exercise is to momentarily weaken the muscle structure in order to elicit a response. In other words, pull the trigger. In our body, we're just trying to pull a trigger and get the body to respond. Once that trigger is pulled, it is not necessary to do additional sets of a given exercise. So we pull that trigger, essentially initiating what we call the muscular growth mechanism, and we move on to the next exercise. Again, if our level of intensity is high enough, it is all that the body can handle in a given exercise. So we want to change our paradigm of thinking and understand that we don't want to challenge ourselves to see how much exercise one can handle, but find out the amount of exercise necessary to elicit a response. How little is actually necessary to invoke change. Okay? So the concepts that we employ here at RP Fitness is to do 1 set to ultimate muscle failure by increasing our intensity significantly. If you have any further questions about that, please feel free to contact us at RP Fitness at 330-867-2399, or you can check us out on our website at www.rpfit.com.